Hey everyone, welcome to this training video on AZ-500 Microsoft Azure Security Technologies. This is the first video in this series I'm doing on AZ-500. This video will cover Manage Identity and Access. The modules covered in this video are Manage Identities in Microsoft Entra ID, Manage Authentication by using Microsoft Entra ID, Manage Authorization by using Microsoft Entra ID, Manage Application Access in Microsoft Entra ID. Finally, there will be a lab detail and there will be the demonstration on these topics that will be covered in this video. The learning objectives of this learning path are effectively managing the identities using Microsoft Entra ID to ensure secure access and identity governance. Number two, manage authentication processes effectively using Microsoft Entra ID to secure user access and verify identities. Number three, implement and manage authorization settings using Microsoft Entra ID to control access rights and permissions securely. Number four, manage and secure application access effectively using Microsoft Entra ID to ensure proper authorization and user authentication takes place. This module is about managing identities in Microsoft Entra ID. Microsoft Entra ID is a Microsoft-offered cloud-based identity and access management solution to protect the cloud applications and enterprise resources. When you sign up for any cloud application, you are offered a Microsoft Entra ID tenant that is used to create the security principles and delegate the access on resources and applications. These applications can be any software as service applications, be it Microsoft or third-party applications. The Microsoft Entra ID enables access to both external like Microsoft 365 or Azure applications and also the internal resources offered with role-based benefits for IT admins and app developers. It is offered in different tiers like free tier, or we have paid license tiers like Premium Plan 1 and Plan 2, and then the governance. We have different features available in these different tiers. You can compare these tiers and choose the one based on the business requirement and the features that suffice your business needs by referring to the link I have placed in the description of this video. So do visit the description and have a look to the comparison of these different tiers of Entra ID if this is new to you. Supports a wide range of features including the application management, authentication, business-to-business collaboration, business-to-consumer interactions, conditional access policies, and identity protection. We will drill down into each of these security features and will discuss in much more details in the coming topics. Talking about the Microsoft Entra ID users, this is one type of identity that we allocate to the human beings. Rest of the identities can be allocated to the workloads, software workloads with the help of service principals or the managed identities, and to the hardware devices also like the workstation devices. You have Entra ID registered devices, IoT devices, or you have the mobile devices. You can assign identities to them. Users perform interactive authentication to access the corporate applications and resources. When you create these users, there are various types of users. If you have a look at the screenshot and you look at the table, there is an attribute called user type. This user type can be a member or can be a guest. When we say member and guest, actually members have broader access and can be offered or provided the privileged roles and assigned access to these people because they are full-time members of this organization. Whereas the guests have limited access. You can think of it like you have your family friends or guests coming to your house. They have the limited access. The same thing is here. So these members or guests can be internal or external. Internal means that they are employee of your company and their accounts and their passwords have been hosted within this tenant. The authentication takes place in this tenant itself. They are native users, we can say, because they are internal. Now, you must be thinking of like why internal guests? If someone is full-time employee with my company, then why as a guest? Actually, you may have new hires or interns who are not still permanent and you do not want to give them the unlimited access or privileged access. Then you can have their accounts created, but adding them as a guest. So those are the internal guests. So guests can be internal and can be external as well. So we have the internal members, we have internal guests. In the same way, we have external people available as guests. They are true guests actually. But we can have external members as well. If suppose I want to give someone the privileged access in my organization to support, then I can provide member uh, member user type. I can assign as member for that user. Talking about the authentication methods, it differs. Internal users manage passwords within the tenant, whereas for external users, the authentication is offloaded to their tenant, home tenant. So home realm discovery is done. They are redirected to their servers and they authenticate, get the token from there, and then they prove their identity to their home tenant. And then this token is trusted. So this is all done with the help of federation. External members access is authenticated via federation and password management is handled by their home tenants administrators, not by you. Well, if we drill into these four different combinations we have seen: internal member, internal guest, external member, and external guest. Number one, internal member, they are full-time employees in your company. They have privileged access. They can be assigned the licenses to get the access to the applications. They can collaborate. Internal guest, like I told you, that if new hires, interns are there, you want to provide them the limited access, but they are part of your organization and you want the native accounts to be created within your tenant, then create internal guests. External member, these people actually authenticate using external accounts, of course, and these types of users are common in multi-tenant organizations. For multi-tenancy, you can have maybe multiple tenants within one big organization. It has multiple subsidiaries and separate tenants for separations of duty, but sometimes I need to add someone or invite someone into one project from the other department or business unit, then I can add them as a member. External guests are the true guests actually. So they are external people and they have the guest access only to the resources. Creating a user in Entra ID can be done in different ways and from different portals. We have Entra admin portal, we have the admin center, Office 365 admin center, Azure portal, Graph module for PowerShell we can use. When we create the users, we have two options. Either we can create the user as a native user within the directory, or we can invite the external people to our directory. We have that option too. Microsoft Entra ID groups are used to logically unite multiple users together to assign the roles or to assign the conditional access policies, and many more settings can be applied, configurations can be applied to the groups, and then they are inherited to all the members of the uh, group. Microsoft Entra ID manages access with groups for applications, data, and the tasks. Groups cater to both internal and external resources with various management options. Access assignment includes direct, group, and rule-based methods plus dynamic membership also we can configure. If I have Entra ID Premium, then I can define the expressions based on the user's attributes, that their group membership will be decided based on those attributes. For an instance, if the user's department is IT and the job title is manager, user will automatically become the member of IT managers group. How access management in Microsoft Entra ID works. Microsoft Entra ID facilitates access rights assignment to individual users or the groups. It is advised to assign the access at the group level so that if user's role is changed in future, then the user's group membership will be changed and user will get the necessary access to the required resources. Groups allow for bulk permission assignments by resources or directory owners. Management rights can be delegated for adding or removing group members. Ways to assign access rights. How can we assign the access rights? Number one, direct assignment. Direct assignment allows resource owners to assign users individually to the resources. This is direct assignment, or also referred as explicit permissions. Whereas group assignment grants access to all members of a group with managed memberships. This is actually this permission assignment is inherited to all the members and is referred as implicit permissions to these users. Rule-based and external authority assignments utilize user attributes and external sources for access control. We can have the expression-based assignment also, depending on the attribute of the users. This assignment can be helpful in scenarios where we want the dynamic access assignment based on the requirement of our application's demand. Here the access comes from an external source, actually, like the on-prem directory or the SaaS applications we have, software as a service applications. In this situation, the resource owner assigns a group to provide access to the resource, and then external source manages the group members. Microsoft Entra External ID. We can invite external people like vendors or freelancers, anyone who is going to support to my organization. Entra External ID allows secure interactions with external identities for resource access. Includes B2B collaboration, Direct Connect, Azure Active Directory or Entra ID. B2C, business to consumer, we can use to publish the applications for public users to sign up and access. Cross-tenant sync. Managed in Azure supports self sign-up and customizable access. Collaboration settings are there. They are configurable. Recommend when to use the external identities. Microsoft Entra ID B2B collaboration users are added as guest users in your directory. Your business may need some guest users to fill higher privilege roles in your organization. To support defining higher privilege roles, guest users can be added to any roles you desire based on your organization's need. In such cases, you can invite these freelancers, contractors, vendors as a guest and an external user to your directory. Secure external identities. Microsoft Entra external identities, we can secure the user's access. Users should have the access to the required resources, accelerate secure app development, create seamless user experience. Microsoft Entra External ID combines the powerful solution for working with people outside of your organization. With external ID capabilities, you can allow external identities to securely access your apps and resources. Whether you are working with external partners, consumers, or business customers, users can bring their own identities. These identities can range from corporate or government issued accounts to social identity providers like Google or Facebook. There are multiple scenarios in which you can add the external identities. If you are an organization or a developer creating consumer app, use external ID to quickly add authentication and customer identity and access management to your application. You can register your application, create customized sign-in experiences, and manage your app users in a Microsoft 10 Entra tenant in an external configuration. Well, implementing Microsoft Entra ID Identity Protection. Identity protection is a machine learning based feature which detects for any anomalies, and this feature comes with the premium plan 2 P2 tier of Entra ID. This ensures that the users' unusual authentication patterns are detected and flagged at risk, and then we can automate the control of access, whether the access will be allowed or blocked. For an instance, the users usually log in from one geolocation, but suddenly a request comes from a different geolocation. So this can be one of the scenario or typical travel location, or it can be the different platform, the applications, the geolocation, or any sort of pattern that the machine learning has learned and is unusual. It can flag that authentication on risk and can trigger the multi-factor authentication or can block the access as per your configuration settings done. Let me demonstrate you how this Microsoft Entra ID is implemented. Either I can use the Azure portal or I can use entra.microsoft.com portal to manage the Entra ID. Let me look for the Entra identity and go to the users. First of all, the options for the users, we have seen that the users we can add as internal users, which are the full-time employees of the company. I can create those user accounts from here. Once these user accounts are created, they are created with user type as member by default, and they are created here with the required domain name that we have associated on our tenant. For an instance, this user is the internal member, and now I want this user to be configured as internal guest because this is an intern in my organization and I want to limit the access of this user. So this will be internal guest. Earlier it was internal member. For external people in this company, I can invite them as an external user. And for that, I need to provide their email ID. For an instance, I want to invite this user Sandeep at gmail.com or Adam at adatum.com, and I can provide rest of the attributes. I'm ignoring them for now, and default user type is guest because that's true guest actually, because these are external people and have been invited to your tenant. Now the user will get a invitation email, will accept that invitation, and once the user is added here to this directory, then you can delegate access to this user. If I search for this user Adam, so this is an external user because the user is not from this tenant. I invited it from a different directory. It could be any other social media identity account as well. Maybe I want to use a global account, Google account, or any other account. So I could have invited that user with this different email ID as well. For an instance, there is a user brad at gmail.com. So I can invite that user with this email ID as well. So this is how we invite the external people. Now, once that user has been invited, now this user is by default guest, as we have seen that external users are true guests. And then if I want, I can make this user member. So this is how we can change the user type, and we can delegate privileged roles to this user in case we have lack of a staff and we are going to hire some freelancers or external people to support in the project. They need the privileged roles. We can assign these roles to them this way. This is how do we set up these identities in the Microsoft Entra. And talking about the Microsoft Entra Identity Protection, how this feature works and detects any anomalies or security threats, and flags the sign-in at risk, and controls the access automatically. I'll show you in the next demo here. Very first prerequisite is that I need to have the premium tier of the Entra ID. The premium license, P2 license is required for this. It's a premium feature, remember. So be it identity protection or identity governance, many of the features belong to the premium 2 tier only. You can see the MS Learn documentation for the reference on comparison between the different tiers of the Entra ID and especially between the P1 and P2 tier. So under the protection, we see identity protection, where from we can set it up. This identity protection can be integrated with conditional access policies, and these conditional access policies can leverage the user risk and sign-in risks to control the user's access to the resources. Here we have option to configure the user risk policies, and then we have sign-in risk policies. Suppose I want to enable the sign-in risk policy, so I need to decide that to which user I want to enable it. Suppose I want to do it for all the users. Then sign-in risk, low and above, or medium and above, or high. Like I mentioned earlier, that this machine learning will flag the users at risk depending on the pattern being used by the users and the severity of that anomaly. Then I will click on done. Then I will decide that whether I want to block the access or I want to allow the access but with multi-factor authentication, or maybe without multi-factor authentication. So I can have different settings. Suppose for low risk, I can go with allow access. For medium and above, I can go with allow access but with MFA, and then block the access for high risk. So I can decide it accordingly. In this demonstration, I'm showing you how to block this access. Then I will enforce this policy. So it will be a hard policy instead of a soft policy. And then the control is blocked we have configured, and I'll save this policy. Now machine learning comes into action and it starts detecting the authentication patterns of the users. If you have set it up today, so you need to wait for a few days for this to come into action, because over the period of time it will detect those authentication patterns and then will start working. Like it will check that what are your usual locations, usually where from you're logging in, what device factors or the device type or operating system platform or the application you use to connect to the applications. Now to demonstrate this and simulate a risk for identity protection, I will use Tor browser, which hides your identity, and I will try to access the portal.azure.com or any cloud application which requires the authentication. So I will go with this portal.azure.com to do the authentication. At the authentication prompt, I will have to provide the username and the password. So I will authenticate using the user, which is this. And because I'm logging in from the Tor browser, so and it is hiding my identity, so Entra ID Identity Protection will detect it as a risk because my identity is hidden. So if I'm behind the anonymizer VPN, which is hiding my network, or I'm using this Tor browser, which is representing its own network to the Entra ID, so it will be considered as a risk. And because I have blocked the access, the policy I've configured, so I get the message that your sign-in is blocked. We set up the Entra ID Identity Protection, and it starts working with machine learning to detect any unusual authentication patterns or activities, and will protect our identities from being tapped. And in case if you want to use multiple different combinations for different risks, for user risk and sign-in risks, then you can configure it through conditional access policies, and you can define different conditional access policies for different applications and user groups, and for different sign-in risks you can have different types of controls. So those different combinations you can make in this conditional access policy. I hope this tutorial was informative to you. Thanks for watching, and keep watching other videos, and don't forget to subscribe my channel.